Hi, I'm John Harford of Fox and Boar Games and the designer of the TrashSexy Raccoon Roleplaying Game. If you're looking for a break from orcs and dragons, or a game you can play in an hour with no prep, this is for you. TrashSexy is an RPG that reveals the secret world of raccoons as you go on a garbage-grabbing adventure. The TrashSexy game starts with the core rulebook, which is everything you need to know to play the game, and 60 location cards. They're also available in print and play versions through DriveThruRPG. That's where you can also buy and have shipped to you the physical books and physical cards. You start by choosing your Trash Master. That can be anybody at the table. You don't have to have one game master that does all the work and creates all the adventures. Now I'll tell you about the skids of TrashSexy. Think of them as the raccoon tribe from which the character hails. It indicates what kind of environment they come from, and also things they tend to be a little naturally good at, and maybe not quite as naturally good at. First we have the back alleys. The back alleys come from the urban environments and they're tough city dwellers. Then we have the bumpkins. They come from rustic environments like farms and out-of-the-way villages. Next are the cruds, the dark and mysterious sewer dwellers of the raccoon world. Then there are the richies, who live in quaint suburbia and are used to the comforts of life. Last we have the whiskey jacks, who are deep wilderness dwellers and hang out around moonshine stills and in forgotten places. From the 2 TrashSexy expansion, we have 2 additional skids. We have the homies that live within the walls, under the floors, and have sometimes even been adopted by humans. Then we have the ramblers, who travel far and wide, hitching the rides on the flatbeds of trucks and in boxcars and telling stories of their adventure. Set up your escapade. You do that by simply rolling dice on a couple of short tables, and that gives you all the parameters you need for how long your adventure will go and what kind of environments will be encountered. First, you'll start by rolling on a chart to decide what kind of map category. The map is the environment you're going to play in. An urban environment, a wilderness environment, an underworld environment, a rustic environment, the suburbs, or the players can choose. Next, you set up your location. You draw a location card, and then you look at the back of the card. And that tells you what sort of incidences and interactions may occur at that location. Once at the location, the players have a number of options. They can forage for trash, and they do that by following the coded icons to use certain moves, those are your skills, on each card. But they can take any action. With enough creativity, players can explore the location like in a regular RPG. Today I'm going to show you how to set up and play a location in the TrashSexy game. That's kind of the core of TrashSexy. When you start, the Trash Master draws the location and reads through it. They can read the text here. That is your flavor text. They also should take note of which moves are used to forage. They're also going to want to take a look at the encounters, which are your interactions, that's your NPCs, and incidences, which you can think of as your tricks or traps in a traditional role-playing game. Then there's some other information for the Trash Master that they can use, as well as any other additional notations about how moves might work on that board. Plus, there is loot there at the bottom. This game is cooperative. It can be played like a traditional RPG in which one person sets up all the encounters and acts as a moderator for player actions, or from game to game, or even episode to episode, the Trash Master might change. For that reason, all cards are played face up so that the players can access those cards. The first thing that the Trash Master will want to do is determine how much loot is at the location. You roll the die, a d4 or a d6, and you add the modifier. And that's the total amount of trash available at that location. The minimum is the minimum amount required that the players must uncover to close that location and move on to the next one. The next thing that the Trash Master will want to do is roll for the encounters. That will be an interaction, again, which are your NPCs, and your incidents, which may be considered environmental hazard, like a trick, trap, bad weather, that kind of thing. They can also choose those. Or they can simply make it up as they go along using these as prompts. All of these have statistics located in the book that the Trash Master and the players can reference. Once the Trash Master decides the incidences, interactions, and loot at the location, the players decide how they're going to respond. The most common action that you take is foraging for trash, because as I said, you needed to collect a minimum amount of trash to go to the next location. You collect trash by following these indicated moves. In this case, you would have Finagle, Slink, and you would have Use. And every character has the option of using those moves, but some of them are better than others, as indicated by a modifier number next to that move. You'll probably notice now that each move is also aligned with one of your two character traits, trash moves and sexy moves. Each one of those will have a D4 or a D6 allotted to it that you choose at character creation, or that has already been chosen for the pre-generated characters. And you would roll that die, and you would then add any modifiers that you have, or perhaps other modifiers such as map modifiers, with some characters having bonuses in certain environments and penalties in other environments. And player characters are always trying to roll a 4, no matter what die they're rolling or how many modifiers they have. In this case, this character might want to choose to try to use Finagle. Now, if you notice, they don't have a bonus in Finagle, Find, or Use. That's okay. They just roll the appropriate die. In that case, if using Finagle, they'd roll a D4 and be trying to get a 4. When a character has no bonus, they might want to choose a move that gives them the 6-sided die, because that's a greater chance of success. So we'll say that this character, this Whiskey Jack, is going to Slink. When they Slink, they're rolling a 6-sided die, and they're trying to get a 4. And again, they've chosen Slink because that's one of the listed moves up here for the foraging action, and that is trying to collect trash. They would roll a 2, they wouldn't succeed. Then their turn is done. Another player may try to forage or may try to do something else. Now, if they succeed by rolling a 4 or higher, then they collect 1 piece of trash. That goes in the trash pack. There's 1 towards the minimum of 3. In the long-term game, characters may want to try to forage beyond the minimum because that allows them to collect more trash, which at the end of the game is sometimes required for an additional quest goal or can be spent to increase your character attributes. As many characters may forage in any given round that they would like, but if loot is successfully found on that particular round, then there's an additional -1 off the die roll for every subsequent character that attempts it. So that sometimes characters can get lucky and in the first round in a location get their minimum loot, but in many cases are going to have to spend several rounds there foraging. As they're foraging is when the encounters occur. There is a method listed in the TrashSexy book called a timer die, which is an incremental +1 on the die, and when it reaches a 6, the encounter occurs. Or the Trash Master can simply decide when that particular encounter is going to occur. For example, on the second round of foraging or the second round of actions, the Trash Master may decide that the local cop shows up and finds raccoons foraging in the food truck. And then the characters have to decide how to negotiate it. Outside of foraging, the characters may use any or all of these moves to attempt different actions. For example, this case, instead of foraging, the Whiskey Jack may want to bite the cop's ankle when he appears. And then he would go through the same process and attempt to roll. And there are rules for inflicting wounds on foes, for using locomotion or outrun to try to escape a foe or to hide using Slink. All of these cover most of the basic actions a raccoon would like to try. I encourage Trash Masters and players to get creative with it. I even say in most of my games, if you give me a really creative way to use a move that isn't necessarily listed up here, I'll sometimes give them the benefit of the doubt. There's also the option of a 6 occurring, which will give, in some cases, a slightly better result than normal. Or if a character manages to accrue enough bonuses to get an 8, then there's usually some critical success reward. These rounds continue with the characters foraging or responding to the threat or exploring the environment until you get the minimum amount of trash or as much trash as the raccoons would like to try to get from that location. Then, after the encounter, the 2 initial encounters have been resolved and any active encounter is resolved and the trash is collected, the location can be turned, and the raccoons can continue to the next location. That's the core of TrashSexy. That is how most of the turns of the game go, with some variations, such as when a quest goal is going to be found, or if really unusual circumstances are dictated by the card. To find TrashSexy, you can go to our website, foxandboargames.com, or go to DriveThruRPG Fox and Boar Games. You can get both digital print and play copies and the physical copies, including books and location cards. In the two TrashSexy. TrashSexy. TrashSexy.
Come here, she's TrashSexy.
Yeah, see?